We're recording again. All right. Good morning. Welcome. Today we are going to be talking with Dr. Ibby Omole. Did I pronounce that right? No, it looks like I got it a little wrong. Do you want to tell us how it is?
It's Omole, but lots of people say Omole, which is fine.
I had a 50-50 chance. So Dr. Ibby Omole. Dr. Omole uses a lifestyle medicine approach that focuses on helping individuals gain clarity about their health by focusing on nutrition, physical movement, stress management, sleep, and social connection using an evidence-based approach. So it's really right up our alley and follows along with everything we've been kind of trying to pull together for this challenge. She provides individualized treatment protocols with a heavy emphasis on genomics. Dr. Omole has an undergraduate degree in biology, a master's degree in environmental studies and acupuncture, and a doctorate in naturopathic medicine. Her clinical areas of expertise include digestive health, like IBS and SIBO, fertility, pelvic health conditions, and genetic analysis. She's one of a select group of naturopathic doctors in North America with extensive training in neurological conditions such as interstitial cystitis, overactive bladder, and incontinence. She's worked in integrative clinics in the US and Canada and previously held a core faculty position at CCNM Naturopathic Medical School in British Columbia. So we are super excited to have you here with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Hold on. Hello. We have with us today Dr. Ibby Omole. Dr. Omole is a naturopathic medicine doctor in Ontario, correct?
Yes.
She has an undergraduate degree in biology, a master's degree in environmental studies and acupuncture, and a doctorate in naturopathic medicine. Dr. Omole uses a lifestyle medicine approach that focuses on helping individuals gain clarity about their health by focusing on nutrition, physical movement, stress management, sleep, and social connection using an evidence-based approach. So right in our wheelhouse here for this group and for what Lindsay and I do. So we're super excited to have Dr. Omole with us for the Thriving Through the Holidays challenge. She provides individualized treatment protocols with a heavy emphasis on genomics. So that's a new field that we're introducing to you guys, and it's going to be a very exciting interview I'm personally looking forward to. Her clinical areas of expertise include digestive health, like IBS and SIBO, fertility, pelvic health conditions, and genetic analysis. She's one of a select group of naturopathic doctors in North America with extensive training in neurological conditions such as interstitial cystitis, overactive bladder, and incontinence. She's worked in integrative clinics in the US and Canada and previously held a core faculty position at CCNM Naturopathic Medical School in British Columbia. So Dr. Omole, welcome. Thank you for joining us. We are really honored to have you here with us and very excited.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
So on top of the introduction, do you want to just tell us like a little more day-to-day what you do and how you help your patients?
Yeah, I mean, my clinical practice, like you mentioned, Leslie, is very focused on certain conditions, but what holds that together is I really have a huge emphasis on lifestyle approach to helping people. And part of my philosophy with health is really getting people to understand the root cause of their health, of their condition, as opposed to just putting a Band-Aid. So I think one of the things I'm really noticing, especially in alternative health field, if you want a complementary health field, if you want to call that, is this idea that, I'm tired. What supplement can I take? Or, I have gas and bloating. What herbs can I take? And the question I'm always asking people is, well, let's go back a step. Why are you tired? Why do you have gas and bloating? Because if we don't uncover that, then people are in this kind of like a hamster. They're just going around in circles, Band-Aid after Band-Aid after Band-Aid. Or what I like to call whack-a-mole, right? So you whack and something else pops up and then you whack that. And so instead of kind of chasing symptoms, I really get people to focus more on the roots of their health. And then once you take care of the roots, you can actually, the tree can grow and you're not rustling in the leaves, jumping from one practitioner to the other, or maybe one remedy to the other. So that's kind of my, my practice, but my interest in genomics started with myself about, I'll say kind of 5, 6 years ago, when I was just turning, actually, well, 6 years ago now, I was just turning 40. And, I have a general practitioner that I see for labs and stuff like that. And I went from my regular, it was a new doctor, so for my annual checkup, and my labs came back as, like not quite pre-diabetic, but close to being pre-diabetic. And I was absolutely floored, because I thought that makes no sense. I've been eating an organic diet since my 20s. I had a CS in my 20s. I grew my own vegetables at one point. I eat healthy. I don't eat out. I'm not eating processed foods. I don't drink pop. All the risk factors for, diabetes just didn't make sense, even though I did. And I didn't really have I can't think of, anybody in my immediate family, my parents or my siblings, that were diabetic either. So it didn't really make sense. And I started thinking, well, what's the root cause? There has to be something else that's apart from my diet. And that's when I kind of got into genetics, and I started looking into how stuff like nutrient status can actually affect your ability to regulate insulin, because you need zinc for your pancreas to regulate insulin. And so some people genetically, if they have low zinc, may actually have issues with diabetes. And then looking at the role inflammation plays in diabetes. So mind you, I was 40, but I had 2 young kids. I had a practice. I mean, my life was full. I don't call my life busy anymore. I call it full.
Love that.
Yeah, somebody had said, your life is full. I'm like, you know what? Yes, because busy has this kind of like this negative connotation to it, right? So it's full. Like I have a full life. And just looking at how sleep or a lack of sleep leads to inflammation, looking at digestive health. So that's really how I started looking at my health from a genetic perspective, and probably spent like a good 2 years or so just doing a lot of research. And then I started offering genetic analysis to patients, and it's been absolutely life-changing for a lot of patients that I work with, because now you have answers that are very specific to you, right? And everybody's root cause is very different. So while something may work for your sister or your coworker, it may not necessarily be what you need, because you are your own very unique individual. So now when I work with people, it's really narrowing down their diet based on their genetics and what's going to work for them. And then also looking at what are some lifestyle factors that are maybe impeding your health, apart from you're eating a good diet, you're exercising, you're drinking water, you're doing all those things, but are you taking the right supplements? Because I also took the wrong supplements for many, many years. I took all the stuff that we're all supposed to take because they're good for us. And I used to be a firm believer, excuse me, that as long as your diet is solid and you have a good diet, you don't need multivitamins. And I've since changed my stance. I mean, I still believe that a good diet is the foundation. I tell people you cannot out-supplement a bad diet. That doesn't work, right? So it's still essential to have your foundation as a good diet. And then supplementation is what's, kind of putting you on top. And so instead of just being average, you actually have optimal amount of nutrition. So that's kind of been an interesting 180 that I've had to do in my own health and in working with people, that it is quite difficult to get all your nutrients in the amount that you need on a daily basis. So some days you're better with some nutrients than other days. And if you have genetic variants that affects the way you activate your nutrients, then you will benefit from having a multivitamin. Like a good example would be beta carotene. and carrots, like carrots, sweet potatoes, they're high in beta carotene. Some people carry genetic variants that they actually don't activate or turn into retinol palmitate or retinoic acid active vitamin A. So if you have genetic variants such as that, your efficiency could be anywhere from like 30 to 50% of all the beta carotene that you're actually activating to active vitamin A. So somebody who has that genetic variant would benefit from a multivitamin that gives them a little bit of active vitamin A. So when you combine your diet with the supplement, then you're actually ensuring that you are meeting your, the amount you're supposed to have on a daily basis. So that it's been interesting for people to find out, because now instead of, people come to me with bags of supplements, and half the supplements you're taking, you don't need them, right? Like, if you don't have problems with omega-3 fatty acids, eat seafood or eat more plant-based foods that are high in omega-3 fatty acids, and your body will convert them to active EP and DHA. And you're fine. You don't really need a supplement if you make sure you get those in your diet on a daily basis. And so it's kind of allowing people to make those choices about their health, and to really approach their health from an aware and informed perspective, and just getting to really know yourself and, what foods bother you or how you feel when you eat certain foods. So at my house, we eat dinner as a family pretty much every single night. I have 2 young kids. My husband is not allowed to have his device at the table. So we eat, we have family time. It's the only time we actually really get to talk, and I find out all the fun stuff that's happening, all the drama that's happening at school or what happened that day. And it's interesting with kids, right? Because sometimes kids would just choose certain things that maybe they don't want to eat. And it's interesting with my boys that, one of them has some food sensitivities, and there's certain things that he's always said, I don't really like, to find out that he actually is sensitive to them, right? So I think as when we're younger, maybe we have that intuition about our bodies, and then as we get older, we kind of just lose that, for some reason. And so helping people to tune into themselves and really have a relationship with food, as opposed to just something that, you kind of grab on the way to doing something else, but trying to create those times to just sit down and enjoy a meal, which probably is how most adults now grew up. Like I grew up that way, eating family meals. And then on Sunday, my mom would always make some kind of a bigger meal, like a Sunday meal that we would have, and really encouraging people to carve out time to do those things again.
I love that. So exciting.
Yeah, there was a lot in there, but like, I love talking to you, Ibby, because everything that you say about your philosophies and how you treat your patients and what you try to teach them is so in line with what Lindsay and I teach, that it's like, like we were meant to be a triad. Like, I just love listening to you, because I'm like, yes. So that's a lot of fun. And then you take it a step deeper than we take people, whereas we try to just kind of give them that foundation of understanding all of these concepts and changing their paradigm and the way they think about it and their relationship with food in their body, and then focus on healing their gut. You have that, deep dive testing into nutrient deficiencies and genetic markers that they may or may not have that contribute to how they might be processing their food, because your gut health is important to determining how well you're absorbing your nutrients. But then on the next level, if you're still experiencing a deficiency and you're like, I don't understand, I eat so much fish, my gut's healthy, maybe you're not converting, into DHA or whatever the case may be. So that can be a very important piece for the, of the journey. And we've been talking this week in our group about experimenting and exploring and observing. So just trying different things out and seeing what happens. But sometimes when what you've been seeing happening is not what you are hoping is going to happen, you might need to look a little further into why that might be. So I love that you have that component that you can share with people.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting point. You brought up about kind of experimenting with foods, because I tell people, most people in my practice, I have them fill out a diet diary and everybody groans. They're like, oh no. And it's not really about to say, oh, you've been bad or naughty, right? Because food is food, right? At least whole foods. And the whole point of it is for people to kind of maybe realize what they're eating or what they're not eating. Kind of whether you're talking about macronutrients, somebody that's maybe complaining, oh my gosh, I don't know what's going on, I can't seem to lose weight. And then they fill out a diet diary for 2 weeks and they realize that, wow, I eat a lot of cheese. And I'm like, that's interesting, right? You had one piece of fruit or a salad and no fruit or no vegetables. Or what I notice is maybe there's a lot of carbs. I think we have, and I want to take a step back to say that, it's not really like that it's people's fault, to be quite honest, right? And being in science, even as a scientist for both of you and you guys, things are always evolving, right? And so when I was a teacher, I told my students, half the stuff I'm telling you now in 10 years time is going to be wrong. So take it with a grain of salt. As far as I know, it's correct at this particular moment, but I can guarantee you 50% of the stuff I teach you 10 years from now, you're gonna be like, wow, Omole was wrong on that one, right? And that's medicine, that's science. As a physician, I have to be very open-minded, and I'm always looking at the research, and I'm always telling people that was true 5 years ago, but there's new stuff that came out to say that, oops, that actually is no longer the truth, right? So to not be really dogmatic about health or people's journey, but and I think there's a lot of kind of nutrition advice that we've been giving people over the years that even me as a doctor, when I first started out 14 years ago, was giving to people. And now I'm no longer giving people that, that information, only because I'm seeing way more people in my clinical practice with SIBO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And when you look at the cause of SIBO, one of the issues is people eating, whether it's foods that they're sensitive to, but they don't know about, or eating too frequently, right? So now we know that when people are eating 5 meals a day, you're having snacks, and maybe you're eating in the evening, for some people, that does set you up for SIBO, among other things, right? So it's not just about the food, right? So obviously there has to be other things that are going on, but some people are definitely more susceptible to digestive issues. And in the case of SIBO, for some people, I'm like, wow, you need to have 3 meals a day, spaced out 3 to 4 hours, and do a 12-hour overnight fast. And they look at me like, oh my gosh, why am I paying you? Why did I come see you, right? Because I just wanted a pill. And the thing is, if you're already predisposed to having a slow digestive system, and some people genetically are more predisposed to having a slower digestive system, your migrating motor complex, which is kind of what moves your intestines along, that works the best during periods of fasting. So your MMC is most active in between meals and then in the evening. So if you're eating late at night, right before you go to bed, then your MMC is not having a chance. I call it house cleaning. It's kind of like your intestinal house cleaner that comes in and sweeps everything. That's why you wake up in the morning, if everything's working right, you have a poop. Like most people there's a reason you have a bowel movement first thing in the morning. If you're getting enough sleep, you've had 12 hours of fasting, your gut is empty, you've had your 7 to 8 hours of sleep, and that's enough time for your digestive system to kind of clean itself out, sweep all the waste down, and then you have a bowel movement. But, due to whatever reason, people are eating late at night, that really affects that function. So now you have a lot of people that are having bacteria build up in their small intestine, and that's why they're having gas. That's why they're having bloating. But it's even more than that. You start having brain fog, you start having sensitivities, you have hormone issues. Lots of people have skin stuff. I think my hormones are the problem. Like, no, it's your gut. I mean, a healthy gut is so important for so many things. I've never really seen any patient that's coming with depression or anxiety that didn't also have gut issues. And that is huge. Like, that is very, very huge. So I'm like, okay, instead of starting top off, like, what antidepressants are you going to use? What herbs are you going to take? Why don't we start from the bottom up and see what's going on in your gut? That gut brain axis, like, is it working? Are you sleeping? Is there inflammation? And so my practice, I mean, I started doing digestive stuff because people were coming in with a lot of complex issues and their digestion was a mess, but they thought it was normal, and it's not really their fault. And I'm so happy you guys are doing what you're doing, right? Because you don't know what you don't know. And it's not until somebody tells you that, oh, you should be having a poop once a day. You're like, oh, I thought I was supposed to poop after every meal. If you're having 5 poops a day, you have problems, right? If you're having multiple bowel movements, that needs to be looked at. And if you're not having any bowel movements, if you're going 2-3 days a week, that also needs to be looked at. And that could be informing all the other health issues that you're dealing with. So if people haven't dealt with their gut, there's really no point in dealing with anything else, because if your gut is not working properly, nothing else is going to fall into place. And you're not going to have the mental capacity to do all those things, like on a bigger level, all those dreams that you have. You still need to be motivated to pursue them and to stick with them. And if your gut isn't doing well, your mind is not going to be doing well, and you're not going to be able to reach those dreams. And it has nothing to do with your character as a person, like nothing. It has everything to do with your gut. So I think, with just the crisis of mental health, and there's such a focus on so many other things, why are we not really like focusing on the gut and cleaning up? And I think as people, our food system is not the best. I mean, I'll be the first to say that our food system is not the best. And it's kind of up to us. I'm not looking for anybody to save me or anybody to take care of me. Like, it's really up to each of us to, I think when enough people say enough is enough, and, we want a cleaner food system, we want a healthier food system, we want, like, it's sad that it's more expensive to get an organic lettuce than a Happy Meal for family. Like, that's sad. When I had a cauliflower is $8, but you could get 2 Happy Meals for the same amount. I get it. Like, what choice are people going to make? Then you have to cook the cauliflower. The Happy Meal is already done. You just you don't have to take out a plate. Like, it's so, I think some of this is societal stuff that we have to look at. And I'm not trying to put it on people, because I get it. It's not easy out there. You have to work, you have to survive, you have bills to pay. And trying to carve out time to now put food on top of that. But if your main goal is long life, but good long life, like, I don't want to live till I'm 90 and not feel well. That doesn't sound like fun. So if the goal is long life, I think, yes, we need to kind of have a mass action where we start demanding that good food, healthy food should be accessible to everybody and not cost an arm and a leg. And so there are ways. You could join a CSA, which I've been eating organically since I was 20. So that means I was in debt because I was in school, and I worked a job on campus that paid me $10 an hour. And I made sure that I ate well. And then I shopped at Ross for less for everything else.
Yeah, that's actually a really important paradigm shift also, because when I was back in undergrad, I think I had read how the contrast between the portion of our gross domestic income, or like our household income that we spent on food in this country and other kind of developed Western countries is so small compared to other countries and the portion of their income they spend on food. And then when you compare that to the portion of our income we spend on healthcare, like it's no wonder, right? But I know I personally grew up when I first moved out on my own, it was kind of a game of how cheap I could buy groceries for the week. Like how small can my grocery budget be is the way that I grew up learning this household budgeting game. And, couponing and what's on sale and best bang for the buck and cheapest can things I can get. And like shifting that to like that your food budget should be kind of one of your biggest expenses aside from maybe your housing is like a huge shift for most people, at least in America, I know. But it's so important, right? Like if you think about it, and it's also harder to connect because a lot of us aren't spending that money directly on healthcare. The insurance comes from our employer, or it comes from the government, or it just comes out of our paycheck and we don't really necessarily see it. So we can't really, like apple for apple, so to speak, compare it to how much we're spending on food. So we can't say, okay, I'm just going to shift $200 from my healthcare budget to my food budget, because it doesn't really work that way because of the system that we've developed that's kind of grown like this, like infected boil or something. It just keeps growing and building on itself. Like how, like you were saying at the beginning of the interview about like just putting in a band-aid and not fixing the root cause. So we keep thinking like, oh, there's so many sick people who can't access care. What do? Well, let's pay for their care. And then the cost of care goes up because it's this game between like health administrators and insurance people, and then nobody who doesn't have insurance can afford care. So what do? Let's figure out how the government can pay for their care too, instead of like looking at how we can just put more money towards food in the first place and not necessarily need all of that. So sorry, that was a tangent, but I'm really glad that you brought that up, because it is like, it's such a shift to go from like, how cheap can I have my grocery budget to how much money can I spend on a healthy food nourishing my family?
Well,
Yes.
I love your action step of a CSA. I don't have a lot of CSA options here in Montana right now. So we're building a food hub. We're creating a food co-op, and we're saying, okay, here, we're going to provide a guaranteed market. And then we're going to teach all these farmers that are just growing wheat how to grow table food and give them some options to increase their profitability and increase their margins and have a guaranteed outlet for it. And then give us the option to buy better locally grown food and know where it came from and know how it was raised and get to know those farmers and build those relationships, because that's the best way to know how your food's grown and what it actually means.
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, my boys are farmers market boys. And so since they were in my belly, and I know where, everything we eat, not everything, right? Because not most things. I would say I know where 90% of my food comes from. Obviously, I buy ketchup and, mustard and certain things from the grocery store like everybody else, right? But for the most part, the bulk of our food, and it's interesting, right? Because when you have that relationship with the person that's providing for your family, you think about it differently. So yeah, Leslie, my food budget is huge. My food budget is a mortgage, to be quite honest with you, for some people. But the plus side of that for me and for my patients that I work with, when they make that shift, is that you are spending less money on medication. So if you are on medication for diabetes and you're on medication for, high blood pressure or cardiovascular stuff, or you're on medication for any kind of your health condition, I'm like, okay, add up how much money you're spending on medication a month. And then compare that to how much you're going to spend on food. Because the thing is, with medication, that trajectory just becomes more medication, over time. But with food, it becomes the amount of money you're spending on expensive healthcare kind of goes down, right? And then you have money to spend on life. You have money to travel. You have money to do stuff with your family, which is, kind of how we budget in our house. We spend a lot of money on food. We don't eat out. I'd probably say maybe my family eats out once every 2 months on average. I can count how many times in a year we actually, so we're not doing a lot of eating out. But then the money we're saving on medical bills, we spend on doing a really nice experience with the kids once a year, where we actually get to bond together as a family. And sometimes it's in the country, sometimes we leave the country. But when I'm healthy, then I can work more and, grow my wealth and take care of my family. And also when my kids are healthy, I'm not having to take time off work because they're in school, right? And that's the other thing, like looking at the economics of it, right? Because on one end, yes, your grocery bill is really cheap, but at what cost? Like, what is that costing you at the end of 2 years in your health, your family's health? Like how much are you losing in life by having a small grocery bill? But like you said, Lindsay, like, so CSA is community supported agriculture. And it's a win-win situation because farmers are guaranteed a fair amount. Like if you really care about keeping your money in your country, support the people that are growing food for you. I support as many local people as I can. It is not the cheaper way for me to do it because I could get imported stuff, for half the price. But I will buy my produce from Ontario. I buy my milk from a local dairy. It costs me $10 for a liter of milk, right? A liter. And my one boy can go through 2 a week. That seems crazy, right? But the thing is that it helps me and it's helping the dairy farmer and it's making for a strong economy. So when people start talking about whether you're like America first or Canada first, then I challenge you to then put your money in your community and support the people that are feeding you, because that's what it means, in my opinion, to really take care of your own, right? As opposed to saying the government should take care of us, because I'm like, let's take care of each other. And I love CSA. I've had such an amazing relationship to get to know all these people that are actually feeding my family. And I always joke that if there's an apocalypse, I am set.
Exactly.
I have a farm. I'm like, okay, I have some skills I could provide, but I know if there's an apocalypse, because you've seen stuff where there's a shortage of something and people are scrambling. That's never been a problem with me because the farmers are always growing stuff. So while there was, even during like the pandemic and there were lockdowns, I bundled up my kids. We had to wait. It was a longer wait, but we still had food. And I wasn't panicking, like, what are we going to do? There was food because we had the farmers, like they had to survive and we had to survive. And I'm like, okay, well, I still have some income. So if this is how much it costs, I honor that, right? Because I appreciate that, yes, my lettuce is going to cost $1.50 or $2 more, right? But there's this ecosystem that you're supporting locally, and I know where my food is coming from. I know I'm not getting pesticides and herbicides, and I mean, who knows what else, right? But I visit the farms, and then it becomes a fun thing you could actually do if you have kids. Like we've gone on so many adventures visiting the farmers, and some of them have actually become friends. So it's been a really nice way to build community. And whether we're talking about gut health or we're talking about loneliness, and maybe we're lonely because we're so disconnected from each other. When you have a farm you could go to, and I'm volunteering my kids at a place for the spring. I'm like, I have 2 boys. They will absolutely come help you on the farm. They got nothing else to do anyway. They're just playing video games. So we're dedicating part of their day on the weekends to, helping somebody out. And then they learn the value of contributing to a community and appreciating the fact that it takes work to grow that produce, right? Like somebody had to work really hard to get all that food to the store or the market so that your mom can now go and buy it. So I think kind of having a connection to our food goes beyond just nourishing our bodies. It could be a really awesome way to build community and nourish our soul, which I feel is something we need to, I'm urging people to get back to that. Like less Netflixing and Instagramming and more real connection with people.
Yeah. Yeah. We're all about that too.
Yeah, I've been on a theme this year of cooking in community. And I've been more and more convinced that the reason people think they hate cooking is one, because they were never taught the skills, and two, because traditionally in any culture throughout history, it would have always been done in community or with extended family, right? They'd have cooked together, they'd have harvested together, they'd have grown food together. The community would have all done that as a group, everybody contributing different pieces and working as a team, being involved. You've got microbes from everybody that way, right? Like everybody's health benefits, everybody's mental health benefits when you're doing all this in community. It's the piece that we're missing more than anything. Yeah. And there's plenty of research showing how good and how important community is for our mental health and overall health, because nothing else works if that part's wrong.
Yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I love what you said also about like just circling back to like, what's the point of living till you're 90 if you don't feel good, or if you have dementia, or people are taking care of you. And so I've heard it called lifespan or health span instead of lifespan, increasing your health span. And so like really the shift then is realizing that cheap food isn't cheap. It's just deferring the cost to something else. So when you talk about all this, you're supporting your local community, you're supporting your local environment. It's good for the ecology, it's good for the economy, it's good for the community, it's good for your health. But when you get some cheap food, like I know that a lot of people feel like they don't have a choice, and that can feel very disempowering and frustrating. But there are always choices that you can find to start somewhere, and just realizing that you're not saving money, you're deferring the cost to something else. You're just punting it along to it's going to cost someone something somewhere, and the cost is just really too great when you're talking about cheap food like that. Yeah. And we keep kind of digging in a little bit, like dancing around politics and this conversation, and then the one that we had yesterday. And most people try to steer away from politics, but honestly, you cannot talk about any of this stuff without it coming down to politics, because we're in the position that we're in because of politics. And in order to advocate for a better world for all of us, for more access, for more choices, so that we don't feel like we don't have a choice, we have to pay attention to that. There's no putting your head in the sand. If you say, I don't have a choice about anything, chances are you need to get your head out of the sand and pay attention to politics, because that's where you make more choices, is, changing the politics. But
yeah. I think you're so right, Leslie. Politics and policies, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I think it's interesting, because Canada, or politics are a little bit different. But for me, when I'm voting for a party, I'm just kind of like, okay, what are my values and who is aligned with my values, right? And if we're voting people in, then we should vote in people that are going to help our kids live a longer life and help us have better health. And I think that's the thing in politics, right? People talk about there's taxes and we're talking about all these other things, but nobody's talking about health.
Yeah, and they tell you what values to think about. Like people aren't thinking about what is important to me. What do I want to see change? They tell you need to vote based on gun rights, taxes, and abortion. Like that's what you need to vote based on. And if those aren't your like main important topics, like think about what's important to your family. Are those topics like directly affecting your family? Or maybe do you need to think about whether you can feed your kids vegetables, and whether grandma has reasonable access to what she needs and things like that. There are other things to think about. So really like pay attention to what's important to you and not what you're being told you need to be paying attention to.
And also, like I said, I have young kids, and it scares me because our children's generation is the first generation that they're predicting will have a short lifespan in history. Like they're predicting. So there is something wrong with that, in my opinion, right? And so I'm kind of directing people back to health, because without health, then what do you have? And when I look at my kids when they're sleeping, the idea that they're going to have a shorter lifespan than me, let alone my mother, who is their grandmother, for me is kind of very scary. So that's kind of the driving force why I do what I do, especially talking and educating people. And I love what you said, Leslie. We always have a choice. Every single day we make choices, right? Do I brush my teeth? Well, do I get up this morning? Do I brush my teeth? Do I go to work? Do I eat breakfast? Like, I mean, we're constantly, so that illusion that you don't have a choice, that's what it is, right? It's an illusion. I get it. Some choices are harder than others. And there's nothing wrong saying that, yeah, it's a hard choice. You know, and I think some of this is when we're talking about health, not just our physical health, but also our emotional health. And what are the things that are affecting our emotional health, and how is that affecting how physically we're feeling, right? You know, that idea that people say, oh, I just couldn't stomach it anymore. I'm like, oh, isn't that interesting? Something is so bad, you can't stomach it. And so when people have, we're talking about digestive stuff, I'm like, what else is going on? Like, what else is going on up here that's maybe affecting you? But yeah, we always have a choice. And yes, some choices are more difficult than others. But as you said, Lindsay, when you're making choices in community, and a healthy community, right? Sometimes having community allows us to make those choices that feel really, really daunting and really, really difficult. And you know, again, having worked with so many people, they're like, oh my goodness, I can't do that. I'm like, yes, you can. Baby steps, right? Nobody climbed Mount Everest in a day. You know, you cannot prepare for all these things. So when it comes to health, taking baby steps and just really having positive, you know, relationships, and being really conscious of, yeah, the choices we're making, and maybe how that is affecting our health. Like you said, there's in the long run, right? Because one way or another, we will have to pay for it, whether it's now or whether it's later. And I personally don't like to accumulate or push. You know, my dad always said, don't push off something that you can accomplish today to tomorrow. And, you know, so that's an advice that's always kind of stuck with me. And you know, and so I kind of feel like when we're talking about health and food and choices, to, you know, lean into community. And it seems you guys have an amazing community, right? Where it's healthy and people can really support each other, and just being really conscious about what thoughts are we having. I mean, you know, because I do genetics, I always tell people, think of your genetics as, you know, your genetics loads the gun, your thoughts aim the gun, your environment pulls the trigger. So if something is going on, it's one of those three things that you have to look at. It's not a special test. It's, you know, I've had people say, oh, I've spent thousands of dollars in testing. I'm like, I'm sure you have. And yet here you are in front of me, right? So it's like, you know, is it genetics? Is it your thoughts? Is it your environment? Those are the three things that are adding up to affect your health in a way that's either positive or negative. And so those are the things that have to be looked at and have to be addressed. But environment is huge. And part of environment is food, because it's something we do several times a day. Like, you know, we eat several times a day.
Well, and for that access, a lot of people want to talk about, well, I don't have access. I don't have this. I'm on a food bank budget. And I was like, I literally worked in one of the lowest income food banks in Virginia when I was there. And we came up with a curriculum and a plan and go, how do you make better choices within what you do have access to? What are the things that are available to you, and how can you use them with what resources you have? Mm-hmm. And we came up with a fairly respectable plan of things that they could eat that were still real food, that were still very accessible. It took a little bit of time, but not a substantial amount of time once you knew what you were doing, right? And so for people that are middle class and tell me, oh, I just can't afford that. And I'm like, no, you're just not prioritizing it. It's a very different thing. And so sometimes it can feel really empowering to realize that, no, wait, I can actually do that. It just takes choosing it. Yeah. It's easier to go, oh, I just can't. I'm overwhelmed. I can't, politics are too big. This is too big. Okay. But what can you do?
Yes.
And it is, like you said, Ibby, that it's okay to say it's a hard choice, but don't say it isn't a choice.
Yes.
Because sometimes it is a hard choice. And, I used to get really frustrated when people said, yeah, you can, you're just not prioritizing it. I'm like, well, that's because I'm prioritizing multiple other things that also have to be prioritized. And I don't know how to fit that extra one in, but you realize you don't think like, can I, you think, how can I? And then eventually you figure it out. So even if you can't really do it today, just because you're just deciding to prioritize it today, you start thinking, how can I? And you figure it out eventually in baby steps over time. And you can say it's a hard choice and you can struggle with it and you can be validated in that, but you can still work on it.
Yes. Just keep, I tell people, keep working on it. Most people I work with, it's, like somebody followed up, it's been 6 months and he was just like, holy crap. And in the very beginning, it seemed like I can't do this. I'm never going to get better. And 6 months later, he's just like, wow, like a completely new lease on life. And, now this person is cooking and they're doing different things. But again, it was just like, just do one little thing. You're better off doing what I tell people, you're better off walking for 15 minutes every day than trying to cram in a 2-hour, two-hour gym sessions twice a week. Just one little thing. And this is I think it's called Kaizen. It's a Japanese idea that you do one small change every day leads to big changes after a while, right? So it's the idea that just choose one little thing. You don't have to try and do everything, change, like just make one little choice, every week and stick with it. And every week add. And I think people would be amazed at the end of 6 months how far they've come by making just one little small choice. But yes, you do have to choose it. And I always tell people, you have more power than you think. You have more choices than you think. It's really about believing that one, you deserve to have that power and you deserve to have that choice. And I tell people, good health should be it is a basic human right. Like we talk about all these other things and we're not talking about the things that are basic human rights, like good health is a basic human right. Shelter is a basic human right. Access to clean water and food, those are all basic human rights. And I encourage people to kind of fight for it, to say, yes, you deserve good health and you deserve good food. And if less people chose foods that are ultra processed and not healthy, I see big companies all of a sudden, like, A&W, the only fast food my kids are allowed to have is A&W because in Canada, they use grass-fed beef. A few years ago, they started this whole entire initiative, the only fast food chain that's actually listening and being more eco-conscious. So they have grass-fed beef, no antibiotics, the cleanest thing. So once every 2 months or so, I allow my kids, I'm like, that's fine. They're kids, So it's not about me being militaristic about this, right? Every once in a while, absolutely, you guys can have A&W like after whatever they've done. And guess what? They enjoy it. Then it's a treat. A&W for my kids is a treat they look forward to, right? But that's one fast food chain that's, trying to be more conscious and make better choices. And I feel if more and more people start demanding this from everything from politicians to people that are making food policy, that, we deserve and we demand access to good, healthy food, that a lot of these companies would start making changes because it's going to hit them in their pockets. But again, we have to make that choice to say, we deserve a good health span.
But we have to choose those things that we have access to, because a lot of people are demanding access, but they're not actually accessing the things that they have access to already. So you can't just say I deserve it and demand access if you're not willing to make the choices. Because if you have access to healthy food, you're still going to have access to bad food. You still have to make that choice. So, but I love what you said about your patient. Tony Robbins says, most of us overestimate what we can do in a day and underestimate what we do in a year. And it's so true. If you look at what you've accomplished in the past year, you'll be floored, even if every day you feel like you aren't. But I wanted to take that opportunity to bring us back to genetics, because genetics is disempowering for a lot of people. They feel like, oh, it runs in my family. I'm just going to have diabetes. I'm just going to have hypertension. High cholesterol runs in my family. So I'm going to let the doctor put me on low cholesterol lowering medications in my 20s because they just know I'm going to have high cholesterol. Like, it's very disempowering for people, but that's not the case, is it? Because now we know about epigenetics.
Yeah.
And we know that, like you said, the genetics can load the gun, they don't aim it and they don't pull the trigger. So can you just tell us a little bit more about how the choices that we make can actually affect how our genes are presenting?
Yeah. So, I mean, our genetics is a probability, like, it's, there's a certain probability based on your genetics that you're going to develop maybe certain conditions, but that's not written in stone. You can use, and this is where epigenetics comes in, you can use your environment to influence gene expression. So just because you have a certain genetic variant doesn't mean you're going to express it. But when you have a certain genetic predisposition, and then you have a certain environment and those come together. So for example, diabetes runs in your family, but here you are, you eat a lot of ultra processed foods, you have high glycemic load foods. So when you put those two together, of course, the chances of you developing diabetes goes high, just like if you play the lottery. The more you play the lottery, the less likely you are to win. I play the lottery maybe once a year because my mother makes me. I've never won anything, but of course I'm not, but so that's the same with genetics. It's a probability thing, right? So just because you have a genetic predisposition for most people, that doesn't mean that that is written in stone and you can't change that. You absolutely can by changing your environment, right? So if you know you have a genetic predisposition for inflammation or for gut issues, then what the choices you make starts having an effect, right? So then you make different choices and you eat different foods and you stay away from certain triggers, right? You're more conscious about those choices. And in doing that, certain genes don't get turned on. When we talk about gene expression, it's just genes get turned on and turned off. And that is 100% within our power. No one but you can turn your genes on and off. That's within your power. And so that's what I tell people. You have this ability, you have this superpower over you. I only have control. I don't even have control over my kids. They're like 9 and 12. And half the time, I'm struggling to get them to do so. I know as a parent that I have minimal control over my kids, but I have all the control over me, right? And by changing me, that has a ripple effect on them, right? So the way that I present as a parent, the way that I show up, the things that I'm teaching them ends up having and that's a ripple effect on them. And that's just the same with our genetics, right? We have control. So you can have a genetic predisposition for cardiovascular disease, diabetes, fibroids, cysts, PCOS, hormone imbalance, but you can use your environment to actually prevent those genes from being turned on. And in essence, you never experience them. And that is my main message that I tell people. That's what I mean by your genetics are, they inform your life. They don't have to dictate your life or your health. It's just a blueprint. And we know blueprints, you could change things on a blueprint. You can make modifications. We can't change our genetics. They are what they are. Your parents are who they are. And they've passed this set of genetics onto you. So you can't change your DNA, but you could change what's showing up or what's not showing up. And we do that through our environment. And that's our thoughts and our diet and whether or not we're getting movement and community or connection. Like we are social beings. As much as there's all this stuff going on in the world right now that wants to rip us apart, we have to remember that we thrive together, not in individual silos, right? And so part of what I tell people about health is finding your tribe and your community, a healthy tribe, just don't find a tribe for the sake of finding a tribe, right? That the community does, Bruce Lipton, I don't know if you're familiar with his work, but he talks about he talks a lot about epigenetics, but community thoughts, all these things can have an effect on gene expression, which sounds absolutely crazy, right? But it does. So that's why kind of your genetics are not, it's not written in stone. You definitely do have control over how that plays out.
And
I
that
love that. I love that you're doing this swap of like genetics feeling like a disempowering thing, and you're like, no, it's like the most empowering thing to know. Hey, these are the things that I need to be more intentional about for me. I can know I need to supplement this way for my body, and now I can know that. Like, I need to change my thoughts this way for me. That's like the most amazing version of this. And so I love that you're doing that.
I think it's awesome. Everybody says, I wish I had a crystal ball. This is your crystal ball. We do have a crystal ball. I mean, thanks. I feel like genetics and genomics is probably one of the best things right now. That's, like that genome project that was done. We do have a crystal ball. And then, for the first time in history, you could actually have an idea what may happen down the line. And you could do stuff right now to change the trajectory of your health. I can't think of anything more amazing and awesome than that. So yeah, I tell people, you want a crystal ball, this is your crystal ball. So you can use it and run with it and really have health span. And for me, I discovered that I do carry genetics for longevity. So I'm not planning to live till 100 and be sick for like, 2 or 3 decades. That does not seem like a plan that I want for myself. So I'm making all these changes, but it's also different when you know why you're doing things. So as a clinician, it's been so freeing. This has nothing to do with me and everything to do with the person that I'm working with, right? Because it's not about me saying, oh, you know what, Leslie, you should eat this way, because I read in a journal or a magazine that that's what you should do. I'm just like, no, Leslie, you should eat this way because genetically that's what works for you. So it's really not about me. And now you know why you have to do what you have to do. And the choice is up to you, right? And I understand some people are going to run with it. Other people, it's going to take time. But once you know something, you can't unknow it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, actually, I was gonna say the same thing as Lindsay. Basically, like that feels totally different now when you make it a superpower instead of something that's disempowering. And we have a coaching client actually right now who's going through our program to heal her gut, and she is noticing how she's always heard the message from her father and her family that our family just has messed up guts. Like it's just a family trait. It's like a legacy that we pass on. We just have messed up guts, and now she's kind of like, maybe if you stop eating fast food every day, our family won't have messed up guts anymore. Maybe I can change this for myself and for my daughter now that I'm aware of it. And it's really amazing just watching that light come on and seeing people just say, like, hey, wait a second, let's stop here. And that's where those thoughts come in and that kind of stuff. But let's switch back to the gut for a second, because there's so many great things we've been talking about in this interview. And you were talking about SIBO and how I loved that you just like offered a really practical tip as the first thing that you were mentioning about SIBO was just to like spread out your meals more and give your body time to rest instead of, because SIBO is a very intimidating diagnosis and it can be very, very difficult to heal. I know some people who have gone through it and it's just really been like a very difficult thing. So just knowing like the first thing you can do is maybe just try to spread out your meals a little bit.
Yeah. Leslie, we got to wrap it up because it's time. But any final tips, any final thoughts, or anything you want to share with us of where people can find more from you?
Well, oh my gosh, this has been such an amazing conversation. Thank you guys.
We'll have you back again.
I know. I thought it was going to be like 20 minutes and now I'm just like, I'm sure we could just keep talking. Final thoughts. I guess my only thing that I always tell people is that you have more control than you think you do, right? You really do. I guess that's the hill I'm choosing to basically kind of, the hill I'm dying on is letting people know that, you have you have more control than you think, number one. And if people want to find me, my website is, I have a website page. I have an Instagram page, but honestly, I'm on and off Instagram. I'm working on being more consistent and sharing some of this message. But those are probably like, and people can always just contact me on my, on my website. There's a little button for, contact if you're wondering if you want to work with me or just have any questions in general. Sometimes people ask me questions and I'm able to just I'm like, well, I'm not the person for you, but hey, I know somebody who can actually help you. So yeah. Yeah, but
yeah, we're right on that hill with you. We're taking that battle on. We'll be our own little platoon. But this has been amazing, like you said, and like Lindsay said, we'll definitely hope to talk to you more. So thank you so much for being with us today, and we look forward to talking to you again soon.
Yes, we could talk about histamine because we can spend an entire hour talking about histamine and mast cell activation. I think that's probably another area I see a lot of people struggle with, and they don't really know that's what's going on. So, but thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.